Hi, I'm Ken Howard, and welcome to the Gay Therapy LA podcast. Today, I want to talk about gay men and the need for safe spaces of our own. With the continued pressures from the COVID-19 global pandemic, it has come to my attention that in the gay mecca where I live, West Hollywood, California, that's historically been known to be the gay city with the majority gay city council and particularly progressive policies ever since it was incorporated as a separate city from the city of Los Angeles and in Los Angeles County in 1984. But recently, some popular and even iconic and historical gay bars are reportedly closing for good. Locals would know them as the Gym Bar, Flaming Saddles, Rage, since it's been around since something like 1984, and even possibly Revolver, where I met my first boyfriend. Anyway, I was very disappointed to hear this, and this is on top of a discussion I've been reading about in the gay and mainstream presses about the need, or not, for gay bars as such that cater largely to the LGBT plus community in general, but were historically patronized by gay men in particular. Even before COVID, gay men have debated the fate of the gay bar in American cities where bars have been overrun with bachelorette parties, large groups of women celebrating a female peer's impending nuptials by going out to party somewhere safe where they wouldn't be accosted by straight men. However, many gay men saw this trend that emerged as an invasion of gay male-specific safe spaces, where the women didn't come to party with the gay men as much as to party among themselves in their own little bubble within the space and gawk at the gay men, objectifying them the way many straight men might objectify straight women. With the passage of national marriage equality and protection from job discrimination by recent Supreme Court rulings in the United States, some people were questioning the need for gay bars as such, when nowadays everywhere could be considered mixed because of the blending of all genders and sexual orientations in a sea of broad acceptance. Except that it's not a sea of broad acceptance. Some would say it's not even a puddle. Gay men in West Hollywood complain that the annual Halloween festival, which is not happening in 2020 due to COVID-19, is the night of the year when the invasion by straight people from all over Los Angeles County and other places in Southern California makes it the night when one is most likely to hear the other F word, let's say, the gay slur, spoken. The similar appearance of restaurants and straight bars owned by entrepreneur and reality television star Lisa Vanderpump lends more of a sense that the once gay haven Boys Town of West Hollywood is now mixed, with straight people assuming that what's mine is mine and what's yours is mine, with no real consideration that maybe LGBT people in general and gay men in particular might both need and want spaces, commercial spaces, bars, clubs, that kind of thing, of their own, when, nothing but straight bars and clubs proliferate on the famous Sunset Strip in Hollywood just a few blocks north, or in many other resorts or commercial places where people go to party. The individuality of West Hollywood as being a gay, specifically gay male safe space, but also a safe space for lesbians and bisexuals and trans people up to a point. It needs work on that. But there just seems to be the obliteration of West Hollywood as a specific gay male space. And in cities big enough to support more than one LGBT establishment like Los Angeles or West Hollywood, lesbians and gay men historically didn't mix all that much. Lesbians understandably wanted their own safe spaces away from the omnipresent male domination, including gay men. Gay men wanted spaces to celebrate the masculine, including the hyper-masculine, such as leather bars like the Spike in West Hollywood, which is long gone, or the Eagle, among others farther east in Silver Lake, that exist, but are also becoming increasingly mixed and are certainly struggling to stay financially open and not close permanently during the COVID crisis. Gay men in other cities like New York, Atlanta, or London complained about the bachelorette party syndrome too, in which the drunken, shrieking women were seen as an intrusion, as well as straight people assuming that historically gay bars were just theirs for the taking because they promised a decent night of space and music, people, and a partying spirit. However, when COVID-19 hit, the bars in all of Los Angeles County and many other cities across the state, the country, the world were ordered to close. In Los Angeles County, this is still the case at the time of today's recording, which is September of 2020. With the odd exception that bars that serve food and sat customers at tables, however closely together, were exempt. The bars that didn't have legal license to serve food or have room for tables were shut out, leading to no business revenue and no way to pay a still exorbitant commercial rent, with imminent eviction from greedy landlords unwilling to negotiate or compromise in the midst of economic disaster and the pandemic, and a city council and populace generally unwilling to fight those conditions to keep their present-day recreational spaces, which were simultaneously their historic cultural spaces of great significance to the LGBT community. West Hollywood is really only second to maybe the Castro in San Francisco and maybe Greenwich Village in New York City in terms of important gay neighborhoods. The gay scene in West Hollywood, as well as other cities, is dying not with a bang but with a drawn-out whimper from a poisonous cocktail of gentrification, heterofication, COVID-19, moratoria, and just pure greed, where the spaces literally go to the highest bidder, whatever kind of commercial or retail business that might be that goes in the space, with exorbitant rent in a cherished but still kind of run-down urban setting. The tragic implications of this are still too new to be fully comprehended in a population just trying to survive severe economic recession and prevent death from a deadly virus in a country where nearly 200,000 deaths have been determined to be largely preventable had the U.S. President Trump acted sooner on information he knew that the virus was lethal on a large scale, and he ignored it. But after COVID-19 is somehow vanquished with a vaccine or some kind of effective, affordable, accessible treatment, and right now that's a tall order, we will still be left with the dead, hollowed-out spaces that used to be our gay stomping, or at least dancing, grounds for decades, going back to the heady days after Stonewall and before the height of HIV/AIDS. And beyond just, venues to drink alcohol and party at, which could be dismissed as superficial, their meaning to the young adult gay male who has just gotten off the bus in LA after being, kicked out of his home and his family of origin's hometown for being gay can't be underestimated. Time after time, for thousands, these gay men and other LGBT folks found respite, solace, sanctuary, and just a haven away from obnoxious heterosexual privilege that's just ubiquitous. Or maybe they were even escaping downright anti-gay violence in their own homes or in their home cities, where hate crimes can, just proliferate. These spaces were more than just a place to buy an overpriced drink after paying a chunky door cover charge. They were spaces that took one out of the cold. Well, not in LA, really, because it's warm in LA, but, took one out of the cold socially, away from this heterosexist real world and into a world where LGBT people in general, and gay men more specifically, could be in the majority for a change. And that feels good, to be in the majority for a change. Let's look at the history and present day. As a therapist who specializes in working with gay men, I know well the lasting and lingering effects of trauma and traumatic experiences. Growing up in an anti-gay household, church, school, and community for about 18 years apiece, and then having the opportunity to escape that into a noisy, crowded, colorful, music-filled, good old-fashioned gay bar is like a new lease on life. It's fighting back against all that oppression and being free to drink, hopefully in moderation, dance, flirt, and hook up after years of soul-crushing oppression, and being a witness to heterosexual privilege that straight boys are lavished with. Gay safe spaces can be bars, clubs, circuit parties. That's an increasingly obsolete and frankly pejorative term. But organizational clubs, sports teams, arts groups, political groups. But they are still very necessary, if only to combat the oppression that is still very much alive in Trump's America, where the majority of the president's cabinet are people whose anti-gay activities have a long and well-documented history, starting with Vice President Mike Pence and continuing through most or all of the cabinet secretaries and Supreme Court confirmations, as well as various appointees from federal district judges to ambassadors to White House spokespeople, especially Sarah Huckabee Sanders, that vile vermin spawn of her father, former Governor Mike Huckabee, a leader in anti-gay politics, coming from the evangelical conservative religion. Claims that the Trump administration is somehow pro-gay ring hollow to anyone who bothers investigating the record of cabinet members and White House staffers. Hate crimes of all kinds, including against LGBT Americans, are up in this administration. Trump supporters are visible, vocal, and increasingly aggressive about their anti-LGBT sentiment, wrapping it up in euphemisms like, oh, it's just religious freedom, or freedom of choice, or religious expression, and you can't oppress that. Where to them, religious expression is the right to discriminate and even to look the other way with anti-gay bashing and murder. It's that bad. Throughout history, gay men across the world have needed spaces of their own, somewhere to serve as an oasis of acceptance in an otherwise hostile milieu. George Chauncey's book, Gay New York, describes some of this history in New York City, going back, to the late 19th century. Gay men have used codes from green carnations pinned into their lapel to colored hankies in the back pocket of their tight jeans, or flannel shirts and mustaches, subtly signaling to other guys that they were available in the 1970s or 1980s clone gay male look. Gay bars run by the mafia, actually, were prolific in 1950s New York, and that included safe spaces for drag queens, as the documentary film P.S. Please Burn This Letter really documents, if you ever have a chance to see that. It was at Outfest, the LGBT film festival in LA this year. P.S. Please burn this letter. Certain bars, restaurants, hotels, and other establishments found their place in cities across the world in a clandestine network of places to meet. There used to be a little book that really cataloged all the gay safe spaces for gay travelers across the world, because gay men, we don't have kids. Generally speaking, we travel more as a group than other big groups. Doesn't always mean that we're affluent, but it does mean that finding cities that have safe spaces for gay men can be a real high priority for most gay men of any age. For a long time, gay bars had these opaque glass windows, or just no windows at all on the storefront building, so no one from the street could see inside them. Including in West Hollywood, the current site of Mickey's used to be a bar called the Four Star, and it had these royal blue glass painted windows. And then when Mickey's came in and remodeled, they opened it all up with an open patio. But that was something gay bars didn't have historically. Now the open windows and the patios are maybe a little too inviting, sending a message that anyone is allowed in, including those who do not particularly like or respect the gay male community. The diversity is fine when everybody kind of gets along, but when the doors are wide open so that straight people, male or female, that don't really like or respect the gay male community come in, is when you have that sense of intrusion. As if all the other places that they could go that are straight safe spaces were not available to them. They have to have ours as well, and obliterate what is specifically a safe space for gay men to feel in the majority. But, gay spaces have not been without their flaws. Many critics would say that the gay bars in West Hollywood have a shameful history of having a hierarchy that is as insidious as it is mostly unspoken, including racism, particularly against Black and Latinx men, not necessarily against Asian men, although that's another topic. Ageism, that counts anyone over the age of about, 30. and appearance privilege, where guys who are not traditionally handsome or who are heavier weight can be made to feel unwelcome, which really flies in the face of the purported commitment to diversity that gay bars can and should mean. Sometimes safe spaces for gay men have meant that lesbians have been made to feel unwelcome in its own kind of sexism. So, safe spaces for gay men can include the argument that no gay men should be excluded, regardless of body, appearance, age, weight, color, etc., but whether these spaces should also welcome lesbians, trans women, trans men, or straight women is debatable. The problem with the open to all routine is that the original point of having a gay bar is lost. It becomes just a bar, just one more commercial party space that you can find anywhere. And that would just be in the majority. There's nothing special about it. There's nothing set aside for it. There's nothing made specific about what it means for gay men to share a space where they're in the majority. The problem is when the specific needs of gay men to have their own safe spaces to congregate becomes obliterated by the assumption of heterosexual privilege, or that somehow gay men don't deserve spaces of their own because they already have male privilege and they don't need any more favors. The problem is we do. There is a reason that spaces that specifically cater to gay men exist, and if you don't see the value in that, you're not a gay man. So, yes, we do need our gay safe spaces, free of not only anti-gay prejudice, intolerance, and violence, but also as examples to gay men worldwide who don't have any opportunity at all for gay safe spaces that are commercial venues, especially throughout the Arab world, where being gay is and has been punishable by death, all perfectly legal in the Muslim Sharia law governments such as Iran, Saudi Arabia, Yemen, Qatar, United Arab Emirates, parts of Indonesia, and African countries. But make no mistake, the American evangelicals, Jehovah's Witnesses, Southern Baptists, Orthodox Jews, conservative Catholics, and Scientologists would all enact capital punishment for LGBT people if they had sufficient political power and legislative influence of their religion into government public policy. Some of these groups in America are trying to aid other countries and enact kill the gays bills and support anti-LGBT legislation over there in the hopes that as the rest of the world increases its influence and ability to oppress LGBT people in general, and gay men in particular, in everything from job and housing discrimination to systematic government-sanctioned extermination, that they could bring it on home to the United States. Plant the seedling overseas and then bring it all into the United States and import it like we did with, corn or tomatoes or something. For gay men in those countries, the spirit of resistance still creates safe spaces in private parties, showing up in certain bars or restaurants, or forming groups in resorts. You can't keep a good queen down when there is diva music playing somewhere. But in 2020, it's tragic that gay men have to hide anywhere in the world. Our world can never call itself humane or just as long as that is the case. And, like the spirit of Stonewall, gay men and other LGBT people continue to press on for legal and social rights worldwide. And as Lori Jean has said, the CEO of the largest LGBT organization, the LA LGBT Center, has said, nothing short of full equality. Not special rights, not privilege, whatever, all that stuff that the other side likes to lob at us, but just full equality. Full equality worldwide in every state, in the United States, but also an international public policy that supports the lives and the dignity of LGBT people worldwide. And we've got a long way to go with that. And the current American government certainly doesn't support that. If anything, they've done a lot to undermine protections for LGBT people in foreign public policy, from ambassadorships to foreign aid policy to all kinds of international relations, including voting against a bill in the United Nations against the murder of LGBT people in countries. The U.S. representative to the United Nations, Nikki Haley, who changed her name from a more ethnic-sounding name, by the way, and she's a darling of the Republican Party in America now, she took a stand against that idea, and there was only one other country, it was something like Saudi Arabia or something, that voted against that United Nations resolution. So gay spaces are where you make them. They can be created anywhere. For decades, we tended to think of them as gay bars or clubs, and whether they were underground, mafia-run speakeasies, or modern clubs with laser light effects and fog machines on dance floors, back rooms, or sex clubs, a gay affirmative space can be anywhere where gay men congregate to celebrate, support, challenge, entertain, connect, and share a common humanity. In places where gay bars are just few or even illegal, gay safe spaces can be created out of nothing, anywhere where there is a congregation. There's some biblical passage, and I'm not religious, so I can't really quote chapter and verse, maybe one of you guys can, that says that something to the effect of, wherever two or more are gathered in his name, meaning God, there is love. Well, we can say this about gay spaces too. We need these spaces as an alternative to a hard day's work, as an alternative to all kind of heterosexist oppression, and places to celebrate not only that we live, but also how we live. Wherever you are, it's up to you to create, preserve, sustain, expand, and celebrate gay safe spaces, from whatever they were before, to however they manifest now, to however these spaces are going to evolve in the future. But as long as there are gay men, we need those specific spaces to reflect, validate, and celebrate sharing who we are. And greedy landlords and economic pressures from a global pandemic be damned. So when the smoke clears from the Los Angeles skyline with its currently pervasive orange fog from forest fire smoke from climate change that's been ignored by the United States and other particularly selfish governments, we are currently left with a rapidly diminishing availability of gay safe spaces. And whether it's the greed of the vile landlords, the invasion of the bridesmaids, overall just popular complacency, or the final victory of those who have wanted gay men to become increasingly invisible in the new fascist America, it's a tragedy made all the worse in knowing without equivocation that it was all preventable. So, wherever you are, don't let the bigots and the people who frankly wish that we would either blend in with the populace and go away that way, or go away some other way, like into our graves, we resist the efforts to erase our existence by not only being visible, but also by gathering. Take a stand, take pride, and rise up. Protect and celebrate the specific gay male space wherever you find yourself and wherever you can create them with your brothers. Thanks. I'll see you next time.